Welcome to Cybersecurity Sense, a weekly podcast providing updates and insight into the latest in cybersecurity. Brought to you by LBMC Information Security. Now, here's your host.
Hi, this is Bill Dean, again, Senior Manager here at LBMC Information Security, and we are still at the IIA seminar that we're putting on all day long, and now I have the luxury of actually speaking with Sese Bennett. Sese just finished a great conversation related to cloud, migrating to the cloud, some security aspects with that. Sese is a senior manager here at LBMC Information Security. He's been here, I think, about 3 years. Sese, really appreciate you giving the talk. A couple of things I just wanted to kind of ask for the listeners here is, how can organizations that have already implemented security frameworks prepare themselves for implementing the cloud, or what we say, moving to the cloud?
Sure. Yeah, that's a very good question, Bill. One of the things that I always recommend organizations do that are looking to go to the cloud is to really evaluate the current security framework that they're utilizing, whether it's NIST or ISO or one of the other common frameworks, and evaluate that against some of the common criteria controls that are specified for the cloud. Things like the Cloud Control Matrix, version 3, which is an excellent document that organizations can pull down off the internet from the Cloud Security Alliance. And that document can serve as a crosswalk for looking at your current security framework and comparing that to what your cloud controls may be, and then looking at which ones you may already satisfy. And then that'll give you a good roadmap as to what you need to look for in the future as to be able to satisfy the rest of those requirements adequately.
Yeah, and for the listeners, Sese spends a lot of time with some pretty unique clients. Sese does a lot of our FISMA for our government entities, and then also Sese handles a lot of our attestation for FedRAMP. So do you want to talk a little bit about FedRAMP? For a lot of people, it's not a familiar term if they're not having to deal with it.
Sure, absolutely. Well, FedRAMP, first of all, FedRAMP stands for the Federal Risk Authorization Management Program. And it's a program that was put together by the federal government to enable organizations that were federal agencies to be able to utilize cloud services more effectively. So instead of an agency going out and having to evaluate every cloud service provider individually, the FedRAMP program was designed so that organizations could go out and evaluate a cloud service provider, keep the results from that evaluation, and then use those results in multiple agencies. So it's kind of a test once, use many type of approach, and it's proved very effective in order for agencies to be able to use cloud services in an effective way, but also to use them so that it's going to be a secure environment that they can put federal data or federal agency data out there in the cloud without the risk of that data being compromised.
And so what I think I've learned from you is if they're not FedRAMP certified, then government agencies cannot use those cloud providers to store their data. Is that an accurate statement?
Exactly. Yeah. There's of course, you mentioned FISMA, which is sort of the equivalent of FedRAMP, but for in-house data. And then there's FedRAMP, and most organizations or most government agencies are using sort of a cloud-first approach. So they want their organizations to go to the cloud, but at the same time, they want to make sure that they do that in a secure fashion that's going to demonstrate that the federal government is being responsible with data.
Thank you. So, another question: have cloud security risks evolved or been impacted by the implementation of storage technologies like containerization, Docker, those types of things?
Yeah, actually it has. One of the things that we're starting to see a lot now is that organizations are moving a lot of workload to the cloud. And so instead of moving it to individual servers in the cloud, they're moving it to containers that are running on individual servers. And that's an opportunity, obviously, for the cloud service provider to be more efficient with how they deploy cloud services. But it also opens up some additional risks because as that data is being moved out to those containers, many times individuals that are putting the data out there aren't applying the correct access controls to it. So you'll see containers out there that have public access instead of the proper level of access. And that opens up another vector for the bad guys to get in there and get access to that data, because ultimately that's what they're really looking for. They don't care about accessing a server for the sheer fact of accessing the server. They want the data on the server. So the whole containerization movement is a really good thing for cloud, and it's a really good thing for technology. But if it's not implemented correctly, it can open up some vectors for compromise.
And I guess the clients are definitely dealing with data sprawl. When you're dealing with Docker and cloud and all this, it's so hard to get your hands around where your data is at that point. So I guess that's where, some of the compliance frameworks really work to try to, help them with that.
Exactly.
Well, with more organizations embracing cloud, obviously pretty much everyone is either there. Well, actually, everyone's there. Some of them just don't realize that they have data in the cloud. Do you think cloud security is maintaining pace with adoption compared to on-premise data?
I think it's starting to. I think more and more people are being made aware of the risks that are associated with cloud security and with having their data in the cloud. When cloud was first introduced, everyone was really concerned about the risk associated with it because they were more concerned whether they should put their data in the cloud that was being held on premise and whether that security would be equal to what they were doing on premise. Now they've realized that most of the big service providers like Amazon and Google and Microsoft have applied those same level of controls. And then once that happens, you have a lot of the smaller players that will follow suit to some of the bigger players. So what we're seeing more of a movement as to maintaining some of that cloud security at a level that will be equal to or sometimes even greater than what organizations are applying on their individual environments. And that's a good thing, especially for some of the smaller organizations that may not have the staff on hand to be able to provide that level of security that's adequate. They can move it to the cloud, and if they use the right service and they configure it correctly, they can provide that level of service or security that they need to control that data adequately.
Well, and as an incident responder, I'm involved many times when cloud data has been compromised, and with the different models, whether it be infrastructure as a service or platform as a service with Azure or even software as a service. Do you see that sometimes clients, what I call it is, do you see a fumble? Okay, well, we're moving this data or our infrastructure to pick cloud provider. They're taking care of our security, when in actuality, they're not. And so do you see that being an issue as to people not realizing who's responsible for securing their infrastructure and for their data?
Yeah, that's a huge issue, actually, and it's kind of approached from a couple of different perspectives. Obviously, there's a contractual issue that may come up if you don't do your homework when you're going out and you're contracting with a cloud service provider. You don't create something like a RACI matrix to understand what everyone's role and responsibility is in the process. Then there could be instances where you expect them to be providing security at some level, and they really aren't. They're expecting you to provide that as the customer, and that's where it behooves you to go out and do your homework and to make sure that you understand what your responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are, and where those gaps exist, and make sure you bridge those gaps with either technology or processes and implement those at a level that's going to make sure that there's not going to be any ambiguity as to who needs to do what in the event of, like you said, an incident or a breach. So to understand kind of where everybody is.
That's great information, Sese. And I really appreciate you speaking with me a little bit. As always, every time I watch one of your talks, I learn so much. So I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sese.